All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's City Council meeting, Monday, July 1st, City of Cedar Falls. And now I'll call this meeting to order. Thank you for being patient with us getting started. And Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Schultz.
Here.
Latta.
Here.
Cruz.
Here.
Hallbaker.
Here.
Ganfield.
Here.
Chrisman.
Here.
Dunn. Councilmember Dunn absent, Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And if willing and able, could everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. And we'll move to approval of the minutes. So look for approval of the minutes of regular City Council meeting of June 17, 24.
So moved.
Second.
So moved.
Seconded, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Any agenda revisions, Madam Clerk?
I have no agenda revisions, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And we will now move to public forum. So speakers will have one opportunity to speak for up to 5 minutes on topics relevant to city business. This will be for specifically something that's not on the rest of the agenda, so something that's not on the agenda. If there's a specific item, we'll make sure to have public comment when we get to that item. So do we have anyone here that would like to speak tonight? Name and city.
Rick Sharp, 1623 Birch Street. So, favorite time of the year coming up this weekend with the fireworks. Fully aware of the ordinance. I was here 2 meetings ago to ask about it. I just hope you're all aware that Waterloo is only allowing July 4th shooting off. So that could result in more people crossing the border to participate on our side, possibly on areas that they're not supposed to shoot because they're probably not familiar with it. Again, I'm asking that the Public Safety Department take action and be proactive in patrolling areas or staging where there are going to be areas. You do have 4 vehicles on the fire side that are staffed and that can respond. 501, Having said that, what else can citizens do to make sure that citations can be issued to people when public safety doesn't respond or is late to responding? So, short of us just chasing them out of the parks like I try to do. So I'm trying to get assurances for myself as well as other citizens that just kind of gave up calling for the lack of response. What can Public Safety Department do to assure citizens that they will respond in a timely manner, or what if they can't respond or they miss the show from their neighbors, what evidence do they need for a citation to be issued? Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. And I would encourage people to call because it's the only way for us to know. I know we'll be out there responding as much as possible, but anything just for the criteria, do you want to speak to just criteria for, since we're coming up on this week,
Well,
what's allowed, not allowed?
That issue comes up every year, and really it's a criteria that for any offense, it's a simple misdemeanor. So if an officer is going to issue a citation, you'd want to be able to have the evidence to prove somebody committed that offense, when you get to court. So video evidence is great. Of course, an officer witnessing it is the best evidence, or possibly video evidence. But just collecting as much information as you can and passing along to the officer. And we'll follow up on it like we would any other crime that's reported.
Thank you, Director. All right, anyone else for public comment tonight? Yep. No, I think you're good if you want to jump up. Just name and city, please.
Cedar Falls, Iowa, State Street. Curiosity is, I was here about a month ago anyway, talking about a tree on our property that came down, and I did call because we have a second tree, but it hasn't come down, and your arborist came out and took care of that tree. Had branches coming down. I mentioned to him about the house across our street. It's at 916 State Street. They've got probably about 10 to 15 branches on. I think it's a maple tree. That is a city tree that is ready. They're dead. Even, from our driveway, your arborist even said they're dead. The branches are, and they're ready to come down. And I asked him, and he said, well, call it in so they can record it. Well, that was over a week ago that I've called. And I'm just curiosity when, because most of these, if we get any more storms or high winds, those branches are coming down on State Street. Now, I don't know how many people are driving up and down State Street because Main Street is under construction in about a half a dozen places. So, I mean, if the city wants to have a lawsuit, they might want to look into it. But I was going to call again tomorrow and say, do you want to update your list, or am I on the second, third, fourth, or fifth page of it? We're not sure about the neighbors because she has not been in the house for probably 5 to 6 months. We don't even know if she's still alive. She was a very elderly lady. There is somebody that comes about every other week and they cut the grass. And no trash cans go out, nothing like that. So we don't even think anything's happening. So that's kind of what I'm just curiosity of, do I just need to call in like every day and say, has the list been updated, or am I on what page now? So I'm trying to play by you guys' rules and it's not doing any good.
Well, I can say quick, I know just from working with staff that there is a waiting list. I know
Yeah.
they can't get out there right away to do it. I don't know, Chase, if you want to speak really quick. to
Oh,
just,
I'll check on that address tomorrow.
Yeah, because the only reason I'm really concerned is there are, like this morning, there was 8 to 10 maybe runners from Cedar Falls High, the guys' track team. They're running down that side of that sidewalk now. They've been out in the rain and they run. These guys are diehard high school runners. So, I mean, they're out there. It doesn't matter on the weather. They run in the rain. They're probably out there better than most postal people. I mean, it used to be rain, snow, shine, where we deliver mail. Well, that went out the door probably 20 years ago. If it's little rain, we don't even see a postal, and now they're closing on Saturdays, and we never know what's going on. But if there's a storm and that comes down, that branches, they just fall, they fall. And I just didn't know what's going on.
Thank you, David. Anyone else for public comment this evening? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to staff updates. Staff, I know we had a few updates.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to have Director Birdie go over what the rules are this weekend for fireworks. And then after Director Birdie, we'd like to have our library director come up and tell you some events coming up at the library.
All right. Well, Mayor and Council, Independence Day is coming up on Thursday, and so I just want to hit a few highlights dealing with fireworks usage in Cedar Falls. The City Council has approved the use of fireworks on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Independence Day, it goes from 9 a.m. till 11. On the following 2 days, it's 9 a.m. till 10 p.m. And we put out an educational effort to try and let people know that. You've probably seen the signs around town. We've got banners, social media. It's on Channel 15. We will have all of our staff helping to enforce the fireworks ordinance, and we already have been. It's been going on for a week or two. The citations require a court appearance. It's a $250 fine minimum, and we have a zero tolerance policy. If the officers, can show that fireworks are used, they issue a citation. And just some of the things to highlight is, we encourage people to talk to their neighbors if they're going to be using fireworks. Be considerate of pets, veterans, or people that might work shift work who need to sleep during the day. Always consider a fire danger. Where's that debris coming down on? And you have to use them. You can't use them in the streets, parks, or on property you don't own. You have to shoot fireworks on property you own or you have permission to use. And probably lastly, and the most important, is we want people to be safe. In my 34 years, Cedar Falls has had a really good record dealing with fireworks. We've had injuries, we've had people go to the hospitals, we've had bad things happen, but in totality, the community's been pretty safe in terms of injuries and fires. So that's our goal, to keep it safe, reduce injuries, and all of our staff will be enforcing the law.
Thank you, Director. I'll just give one more shout out just to really ask people to be appreciative of the fact that we have this ability to have fireworks. I know we've had a few set off in the last couple of days that people reach out saying they were woken up. It is not legal right now. And we can only have this if people actually follow the rules and are respectful of the community. So just stress, if we can't do this right, then a lot of times we can't keep it. So everyone just please be respectful of everyone's space. And Kelly, if you could give us an update, please.
Good evening. I'm Kelly Stern, the library director, and I just wanted to let you know that this year is the 20th birthday of our library building. This also happens to be our summer library program time, and so it's a good time for celebration. So we're going to celebrate that. Plus, it's also the first birthday of our library mascot, Fable the Fox. So next Friday on July 12th from 3:30 to 5:30, we'll be closing off the parking lot. Fable the Fox will be there, and we will have a carnival sort of event with a foam party for kids like we did a couple years ago. We'll have inflatable games like inflatable hatchet hurling and life-size hungry hippos. That ought to be fun. That's a new one this year. Face painters, balloon artists, and just all kinds of fun. Our friends of the library, without whom we could not provide the programming we do, are helping us with staffing this event. And since this is part of the summer library program too, just want to mention that our summer library program is for all ages, birth through older age, like I am. And you can earn free books just by reading 20 minutes a day. There's still more than a month left of the summer reading program, so there's still time to sign up and earn some free books. And then join us next Friday, July 12th at 3:30 in the parking lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Stern. All right, no other council update or staff updates, so we'll move to special order of business. Item number 2, public hearing on a proposal to undertake a public improvement project for the Katowski Drive Box Culvert Replacement Program and to authorize acquisition of private property for said project. Do we have a motion to receive and file proof of publication of notice of hearing?
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded, and it requires a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Daryl, are you voting? You might have been muted.
Aye.
Or you're a no vote, but I had to ask. All those opposed? All right, that motion carries. Look for any written communications, Madam Clerk.
I have no written communications.
And then we have staff comments from David Wicke.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Tonight's public hearing is for the easement acquisitions for the Katowski Box Drive Culvert Replacement Project. What this project is to replace the Katowski Bridge, which goes over Branch, Blackhawk Creek. This bridge is located on Katowski Drive, about 1,500 feet east of Cedar Heights Drive. You can see on the map the location there. Included in the project is replacing the existing I-beam bridge with a new concrete double box culvert. Along with the culvert will be a new paving surface over the deck of the box culvert, and then associated work with the culvert would be riprap at the wing walls and restoration of the site. Project plans show for the need for acquisition of 2 properties, one on each side of the road.
Okay, thank you, David. All right, do we have any public comments on this item? All right, seeing none, we will close the public hearing and a resolution, look for a motion for a resolution approving a public improvement project for the Katowski Drive Box Culvert Replacement Project and to authorize acquisition of a private property for said project.
So moved.
It's been moved and second and requires a roll call vote, please. I should ask actually.
Vote aye.
Sorry, any discussion from council if you have any?
Sorry, I was waiting to see if there was more discussion.
Thank you for doing that.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That motion carries. Item number 3, public hearing on proposal to undertake a public improvement project for the South Main Street Sanitary Sewer Extension Project and to authorize acquisition of private property for said project. Do we have a motion to receive and file proof of publication of notice of hearing?
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries. Madam Clerk, any written communications?
I did receive one written communication, and it has been placed in front of council tonight.
Yes, and everyone should have that in front of them if they'd like to review it. And then, again, for staff comments would be David Wicke.
All right, thank you once again, Mayor, City Council. So this public hearing is for the South Main Sanitary Sewer Extension easement acquisitions. The city is planning to construct the South Main Sanitary Sewer Extension Project. This will be from approximately Bergstrom Boulevard down to Green Hill Road on the west side of Main Street there. Included in the project will be the extension of the sanitary sewer to provide service to the properties located along the west side of Main Street from Bergstrom to Green Hill Road. The new sewer will be an 8-inch sewer rated for sanitary sewer service. Project shows the need for easement acquisitions from 9 properties.
Thank you, David. And we will now open it up for public comment on this item. So feel free to just come up. We'll start with, just in case I know we've got some likely people for and against the project, we'll start with, well, we'll see whichever one you are. Just name and city, please.
Walt Rogers, Cedar Falls, 4209 and 4219 South Main. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, and other officials for giving us a chance to talk. I and my wife are in support of this project. I can tell you why. We moved in 8.5 years ago, and at that time we had brand new septic put in, and we also eventually bought the rental property next to us, and at the same time they had a new septic put in. That lasted about 2 to potentially 3 years when the city then decided to develop that area behind. It was 11 acres of farmland back there, and turned it into development, which is now James Drive. And we believe probably there was a tile that was severed at that point, because at that point we started getting backup water in our backyard. And so ever since then have had essentially a sewer swamp in our backyard, along with our rental property having the same process. So talked to the city for several years about that. We've talked to the county. There's really no other avenue for us. They can't put another septic in because there's no really where for the water to go. And so we have 2 properties there where septics cannot work or cannot work in the future. So obviously this affects several people along South Main, but for us it's really a health issue. We've got to have a operating sewer system in our backyards and or in our properties, and so it's kind of essential that we have this done. So thank you for listening, and thank you for your bringing this proposal forward.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. And we'll have someone who is not for the project, please. Just name and city, please.
Denzel, 1107 Melrose Drive. More so a curiosity. I'm not a yay or a nay, but more of just a question, just understanding the verbiage here. It says acquisition of private property. Is the person's property who's getting taken, is that going to be the return? Do they know about that? Is it just, oh, yay, take property, do thing? I'm just wondering. Thank you.
You want to speak to it?
The private property that would be needed would be for the project specifically. So the green on the map there, it would be a permanent easement, and that is for would be for the maintenance and upkeep for the future of the sewer. And the orangish color is kind of a temporary easement that would be needed to construct it.
Mm-hmm. And then let them correct me if I speak to it wrong. The owners will be compensated, paid fair market value for the cost of that land, so it's been in discussion with the homeowners. And I believe they can still, it's still on their property, they can still walk over and do things.
Correct, they would still technically own the property, but we would have, the city would have an easement over that.
Yep, so
piece.
if it ever needed repairs or something, they would be able to get in there and fix everything. Does that help answer your question?
What's an easement?
You just want to explain technically the easement, please?
Mr. Rogers?
Gives the city the formal legal right to be on the property owned by another for the specific purpose stated in the easement document.
Okay, let's go ahead.
Hi.
Name and city, please.
Sandy Laurie, 3819 South Main, Cedar Falls. Like you mentioned, we're on a budget. So we're retired, and we're a little bit concerned about the cost. Even though we are compensated for the easement, it's not enough to carry the cost. We're also concerned because we have a well. We have a fully functioning well. We have it tested every year. It's a good well. We're not on city water. So your sewer cost is based on how much water you use. So what they do is they take an average of 1 month of somebody's water and they double it. So besides having to buy into the sewer and pay the cost from our house to the sewer line, which we haven't even looked into yet because we don't have a permanent easement marked yet on our property. So we don't know where the permanent easement is going to go. So we have no way of knowing how many feet we're going to have to pay for. It'll be an extra $50 a month that we'll pay for water that we don't use. So we're a little bit concerned about that. Also, we had talked with, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Mr. Wicke. Yeah, Mr. Wicke. He came out and he looked at where the stakes are. All the stakes in our yard say temporary. None of them say permanent. They also told us we would have nothing within our fence. We have 2 stakes within our fence, which means I assume the city will take the fence down, have to put the fence back up. We have dogs, so we're concerned on how long that's going to take and what we'll do with our dogs during the time that fence is down. We're also going to lose massive trees. I mean, all the way across our property line, we counted like 16 trees. We have walnut trees, we have other trees that are going to get cut down. So we have concerns about that. We're not against the sewer. We just wish you could move it further back so it's not right there within our fence line and it's not taking down all our trees. We're on South Main on the bike trail, which they talk about, you know, the coverage of the trees. We just lost 8 trees last week because the city had to cut them down to put in a new telephone pole. So now there's a big blank space, you know, and then if they're going to take all the rest of these trees down, we bought the property because of the trees. We like the trees. So I think that's it. We also have a fully functioning septic system that there's nothing wrong with. So, you know, we're okay with keeping that. I'm sorry for Mr. Rogers that he has a problem. I'm okay with the city putting the sewer in. I just hope that they can do something to move it away from our fence. And we need to have somebody come back out, as we were told there would be another gentleman to come out and go through the property lines, and that didn't happen. And that's been over a month ago. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. Director Shargi, I don't know if you know the project well enough off the top of your head to speak to some of those lines.
The design engineer AECOM is here as well. The staking that is being referred to is the survey stakes for the easements, and I believe maybe they were disturbed or they were not put back out there, but I believe the sewer has been adjusted for the alignment to not impact the fence, and AECOM might be able to comment on that better. But
You want to come up here really quick?
So I'm Tony Heeman with AECOM, kind of the design engineer for the project. But that initial staking was off a very preliminary alignment that was drawn off aerial imagery only. Since those stakes have been put out, we've had topographic survey done, and the alignments on all 3 areas have been adjusted to miss fences and sheds and such. So,
Do you know, have those stakes been updated?
no, those have not been updated yet, but can.
Okay, so the current stakes are not
No.
the accurate route?
No.
Okay.
And they can easily be updated. So.
One second, quick.
Could I just clarify? Did I hear you correctly, then the fence is not impacted on that property?
Correct, yes. It won't be affected, no.
Thank you.
Go ahead and ask your question quickly.
We can do it whenever, if we're ready for it.
they could probably do it this week, I assume.
This week or next. This week or next. Maybe next week.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sandy. Anyone else for the project? Just name and city, please.
Hi, Natalie Morfitt, 4009 South Main Street. My concern with the project is, first of all, how the city handled it. They came to us in a meeting where they basically said, here is the cost you will pay. Here are 16 houses. We will divide it amongst those houses, and you have no option. This is what you are going to do. And the project was not laid out about how this was all going to be handled, that they were meeting with us separately. So that, in the beginning, set this project up very poorly and was handled project management-wise very poorly. Secondly, you're coming to us with this project that I understand, again, health issues. And I understand the want of of this project in the sewer, but most of us have working septics. We take care of our septic systems. We bought this land and these houses to have the land that we have that's uninterrupted without easements. And not only that, you're coming to us and saying that all of this cost of this project is basically on us and not doing anything to tell us how they're gonna help circumvent this. So if this project were to move forward, the cost should be spread somewhere within the city. You're coming to these homeowners and giving us zero choice and no options on what to do. And it was not handled well from the beginning. And I've had this discussion with several of you on how that was handled. But as far as a member of this community who has fought very hard to keep my children in this community, it's very difficult to then come up against Cedar Falls to say, I've fought to keep my children here as a single mother, and you don't care in the way that it was handled. So I would really like to see this project, if it moves forward, it be handled very differently, and what can we do about the cost? Because I think there's a lot of retired people and a lot of people on South Main Street in general that are very concerned about the cost involved in this put on us. And the answer that I keep getting is, don't worry, it's spread 10 years. That's not an answer for me. You're telling me that I have to bear this cost, no matter what, whether it's over a 10-year or it's I pay it in the next year. And that's a really big deal. So softening the blow is not, it's gonna be spread over 10 years. That's not an answer or a solution. Thanks.
Ms. Morfitt. Anyone else to speak, please?
All right, Rick Sharp, Cedar Falls. I got no dog in this fight, but can you just, someone explain to the public what the overall costs are for the residents, and then if there's the eminent domain or the buyout for the properties, what kind of money are they getting compensated for? And then for the gentlemen were there, like you talk about the stakes, that's a lot of trees to lose. Are we going to save some of those trees, or are they going to be gone on that? Thanks.
Anyone else tonight, please?
Sorry, just really quick.
Just name and city.
Carrie Sherwood. No dog in this fight, whatever Rick just said. But how many homeowners are impacted versus negatively impacted, like Mr. Rogers, versus how many you're going to buy out and how many don't want the project? If there's only like 2 homeowners that are impacted and you're making all these others angry, why do that? So.
Okay. And we'll say, speaking to it, I know there has been a lot more conversations than what it seems. There has been a lot of individual conversations with the homeowners, so there has been a lot of ongoing conversation with this. And the public forum is to make sure we get this as a public conversation, especially for council to be able to take into consideration. So we will talk when we get to the council piece of it, a little more of kind of what the conversations have been and some clarifying questions, but this is definitely one we're wanting to make sure we take the time to have public conversation on, because we know it impacts a lot of the residents there. Any other?
Kim Jensen Jordan, and I really don't have anything in this either, except for just to bring up how we must have monies in the budget for many different projects, and not sure how much money actually sits just for acquisitions. There was a property on First Street that was just recently purchased, and it had to go $10,000 over budget. And then there was asbestos that was just now noticed, so there's additional cost to that. There was also at the same time some property on Cottage Row that was purchased that's more green space. And these properties are just being kind of bought with monies that we don't really know where they come from. And then I was looking through some old paperwork, and back on in 2022, we had Viking Road Industrial Park, 200-acre expansion site to engage a mass grading and construction for infrastructure associated with the first phase, and that was a cost of $8.7 million. So it seems like there's big monies kind of set aside for some of these things, and maybe some of that could offset losing trees. And but if there's such big money, I'm just kind of curious where maybe some of the acquisitions are coming from, and if we look at the extra costs, kind of like at 12th Street as well. There was, back in 2011, some properties that were purchased that were extremely on a lesser tax base, and now they've been recently purchased for double what they had been assessed for back in 2011. So just kind of looking at those costs and trying to put into perspective where we're going with some of the acquisitions, maybe for 18th Street next year, or if we could possibly pull back from having to do some of those roundabouts and cut the costs on some of these other projects or interfering with people's property that they're purchasing.
Thank you, Kim. Anyone else for public forum tonight for this item? All right, seeing none, that we will then close the public hearing and look for a motion to approve a resolution approving a public improvement project for the South Main Street Sanitary Sewer Extension Project, and to authorize acquisition of private property for said project.
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second.
It's been motion and seconded and open for council discussion.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Councilman Cruz.
I think I chatted with Director Schrage just a little bit ago just to verify. I think I'm not in favor of the cost being foisted upon the homeowners. They bought these parcels when they were kind of these were probably developed when they were the outskirts of town. Current owners aside, they might not have bought after that, but it's my understanding that when these connections are put through, that we're not going to force them to connect to the sanitary sewer unless they choose to. But I clarified, I believe, that when they renew their septic permit, so if their septic does fail or they want to proactively reestablish septic service, that they wouldn't be allowed to re-permit. Is that a correct assessment, that the county or the city won't allow them to maintain septic in a working fashion?
That is correct, that the goal of the project would be upon septic failure, whether it's normally a septic is not inspected unless the homeowner notices issues with it, or upon sale, that is a requirement by the state of Iowa and the county that the septic system is inspected and passes their inspection process. At that time, if it passes, there would be nothing done by the city. The new owners can continue to use the septic. If the septic does not pass and needs replacement, that would not be able to be replaced. They would have to connect to the city sewer at that time.
Another question, just for clarification, if I may. I think I was under the impression after some of the public hearings or some of the initial meetings that most of the members that were affected here were all in favor. Having heard a little different tonight, I just wanted to double check. Obviously, I feel for Mr. Rogers' plight. We want to be able to get him hooked up. I wonder if there's a way to connect just the willing participants and leave the other property owners to what they purchased, service with septic. Is there an option in that regard that could be explored at this juncture?
Generally speaking, no. For the sake of an example that I would use is if you're a homeowner that's towards the end of the sewer extension and you would like to connect, you have to come across all of the other private properties to get to that last individual who wants to connect at the time. So we have to get it extended to that point.
If I may, as I'm looking through the overhead, teeing off of that new development that Mr. Rogers referenced that may have indeed circumnavigated some tiling that was draining from his property, if it came off of the south side of that upside down chevron, or that chevron there, and came through Mr. Williams' property over to Mr. Rogers' properties, there could be a tie-in that way and just do a few of the properties that are impacted. I just don't know who all wants what. I'm just curious if we explore those options. Maybe AECOM could.
Yeah, so I'll go back to the image a little bit. Sure. We kind of, we'd like to bid it all as one project to get the best cost, but generally speaking, there's 3 areas that we're talking about. We have the southernmost area, in which we call Area 1, which is on the farthest left part of the picture. In the center of the picture, That's what we call Area 2, and then Area 3 is on the farthest north end, the longest extension. And just for location speaking, Area 2 in the middle that you're referencing, that's the Mr. Rogers' location would be Area 2, which is actually only serving, I believe, 3 property owners.
I'll let others have a moment.
Mr. Mayor. I would say that the vast majority of what I've heard from the neighbors in the neighborhood is not, especially in the last week, been overly positive as it relates to this project. I understand the thought process behind it, and I understand maybe the desire. I'm kind of with Councilman Ganfield in that it's one of those where you'd like to be able to see the option versus the thou shalt. So I guess I understand Director Shiragi's point of wanting to bid this to one project to get the best price we can, but I am somewhat intrigued by Councilman Ganfield's thought on is there a way that we could parcel this out in some way just to appease the neighbors that we do have there. Between written communication, email, and phone calls here in the last week, it's been relatively vocal on a different side of the coin for this project. So I understand the desire to move forward, but just the feedback I've had from folks in my ward there, it's definitely cause for pause.
We no longer have any public comment unless council is willing to open it up, but.
I'm willing to open it up.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Could they come to the mic?
No, they can't, so they need to speak from their seat. Sorry, Daryl.
We'll reiterate for you.
Wait, hold on. We'll see if we can get a mic over there.
Oh, that'll work.
And then can we get your name and address too, please?
It's like the Price is Right.
Well, we'll see if Denny can
Bailey's
turn
gonna
that
push
mic
button.
on.
I'm Barb Shepard, and I live at 3911 South Main. I have lived on South Main my entire life. My parents were originally Doug and Sandy's property. They developed that. We have wanted sewer for always out there. You know, it's just, it could never quite pass everything during the times frames that were necessary. But I just want to say that I'm getting ready to sell now and move elsewhere. But prior to selling, I will have to put in a whole new septic system because mine will not pass at this point. And to me, that seems, the cost of that is higher than it will be for me to connect to your city sewer. And so I don't see any downside to this. And we're given, 20 years after the project's done? I thought, I remembered that, you know, if you sell or can't pass your septic test at that point, then you have the option of hooking on. If that option wasn't there, you would be in a lot of trouble. You know, and it's just a point that I feel, I just want to say that I'm a for person. And I appreciate all the work that's gone into this and hope it will carry through.
Yeah. Thank you, Barb.
Thank you.
No, we usually don't do back and forth between public. Do you have a public comment that you'd like to come up and make quick? Council's okay with it?
Yes. Yes.
Go ahead and come up.
Emily Olson, 4003 South Main. I actually don't have a house there. I have 3 acres. And so this project for me, I'm indifferent because I can go septic, I can go sewer. My concern is the cost, because the cost associated is based on how much acres I have. I bought that property as my dream property and I have 3 acres. So for me, when I looked at that property, that's my dream place to be in Cedar Falls. So now when I get this sewer project, I think my bill is close to $30,000 to do that. But then I have this huge easement because I don't actually have a house on there. They're going to use that driveway for me as easement for this sewer project, and I think on number 3, was that the north one that you were talking, Chase? So my biggest problem is, talking to him, was like, well, it's based on acreage is how I am paying for this project. And I talked, well, I have one house. There's 16 people tying into this, but because I have so much land, I'm going to be fit with the bigger bill. And their thing was, well, you're going to get paid for the easement. Okay, so I get paid for the easement. Do I get a check before this happens? And then now do I have to pay, is that income tax? Do I have to pay on that when I get it? Do I lose money on that because of my easement? Or do I get a credit? So how is that going to be allocated? And then I still have to pay to be able to get this all hooked up. And I have one house, and it's not divided between 16. It's divided based on the amount of acres that you own. So if you have a very small lot, this is actually feasible and doable for you. If you have your dream property with 3 acres, it's still not cheap. And I got 2 on the way, and I got 2 at home. Just because I have more land doesn't mean I have more money. So, thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Quick question, Director Sharkey. Do you know for the payments for the easements, are those taxed as regular income?
I might have to defer to Mr. Rogers on that one.
I'm not going to give tax advice, but generally, real estate payments, I think, are based upon capital gain, but I'm talking way past my expertise here. Maybe Jen knows.
So our official answer is we don't know.
We don't know, and if
But we
I
can
knew,
find it out.
I'd be reluctant to say. But we can put something out if we get the information.
Okay.
Could I say a couple things regarding some of the comments, Mayor? I guess the first thing would be to Ms. Shepherd's. I've only been with the city about 11 years, and I know this project came around in 2011 or 2012 before my time, and then there was another time even before that, and it gets to about this stage, and then it kind of fizzles out at that point. There has been about 2 properties that have sold in the last 5 to 8 years. Both those properties have had to replace the septic because they did not pass inspection. As far as some of the discussions on negotiations, fair market value, easements, all those types of things, keep in mind that the tapping fee district would have to be done by ordinance, and that's generally done at a later date when we have actual bid costs and things for the project. So that's a later kind of discussion when we have more accurate information. Right now, we're going off generally estimated construction costs that we have.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
Could staff speak to the implications of the environmental effect that this project has or would not have?
Obviously, failing septics have health concerns. Keep in mind, we do have impaired watersheds in the city, some of which have could be traces of E. coli and those types of things that are generated by whether it's septics or other things. So generally speaking, we like to at some point eliminate septics within the city limits, over time.
I know, just speaking to the project, I know looking at the numbers early on, that was one of the concerns with what's going to be the end cost on the homeowners. And I think our intent was to try and make it so that tapping onto it was about the equivalent cost to what it would cost to eventually replace the septic system. Because correct me if I'm wrong in the understanding of this, but essentially it'd either be the 20-year time limit where it'd have to be connected, or once the system fails. So our goal was kind of to time it out with, well, it's about when you would have to replace the septic system anyway. And you're essentially incurring this cost instead of the cost of developing a new septic system.
Correct. The goal would be to make it fair amongst all owners, whether you have a big lot or smaller lot. That's why generally it's based on acres. We do it with developers, extension of sewer. Anytime the sewer is extended, it's on the private property owner to extend it, whether it's for a homeowner or for a 200-acre subdivision.
But I would admit that it's not the perfect formula when you're trying to calculate it based off of, and we'll get that information, but it's important to know if you're paying taxes on that amount, because that's a big chunk.
I've got a question regarding, actually a couple questions. Regarding the trees, is this something that's a threat? Or is it actually that's where the construction would go through?
So initial conversations with property owners thus far have been generally just for approximate land, land value, anything on the final alignment that is impacted, whether it's fence, doghouse, tree, all of those are compensation measures that would be dealt with through our right-of-way company that we have hired. Property owners would be compensated fair market value for those items.
Now, my question was the people that have that there's a threat that maybe there are 16, 18 trees that be taken down. Is that in scope? Is that really going to happen if we go through with this, or we don't know for sure yet?
I don't have the exact number of trees for that property, but we can look into it. Usually, if for example, if there's 16 trees within an easement, we'll do our best to not impact the ones we don't have to. If 12 can remain when the contractor gets out there, we'll keep 12 of them and 4 have to be removed. But keep in mind, the property owner would be responsible for everything within that easement location. So I know some of these parcels have heavily wooded areas in the rear yards, so it's difficult to, whatever alignment you pick, there's going to be some impacts.
In what direction do either the pumping stations go or where the connection go? Does it go from south to north, like where the Rogers property is? Could he tie in with the James Street and that would be done, or do we have to go from the north all the way to Viking Road?
So the area on the right, what we call Area 3, drains along the bike trail there to the north. That center piece there, Area 2, that's kind of in the V shape, that drains towards James Drive, as well as so does Area 1. And I did misspeak earlier. Mr. Rogers' parcel is part of Area 1, the farthest most left one. That has to, it's just like my example, has to come across another private property to be able to get to Mr. Rogers' parcels.
And in that Area 1, how many homes are we talking about?
I believe there's only 3 separate property owners in Area 1.
And what do we know about the concerns there, the people that own those properties and that?
Generally speaking, the further south one has been supportive. The one larger parcel there, not so much. We've had a separate project, Area 1 specifically, a couple years ago that we tried to move forward, and that kind of fizzled out as well. And then we talked about generally the whole area, like it was done in past projects, to bring that forward.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep, Councilmember Cruz.
Thank you. Director Shari, can you elaborate on those blank spaces between 1, 2, and 3? Are they the tapping lines going to go in such a way that they don't have to have easements and sewer line on them, or what's the reasoning for those open 4 lots, what it looks like, or maybe more?
I'm assuming you're referencing the gaps in between the colors. The colors are only referencing the easements that are needed for the project. So the ones that, the parcels that do not have any colors on them, there would not be a required easement that would be necessary to build this project. The tapping fee is kind of separate. That is done by meets and bounds land description within the ordinance at a later date. So generally, it would just be the entire boundary of the area is what would be described.
If I can add to that, Chase, so there are 3 entry points for this. So these are really 3 separate systems coming in. And that's why there's those 2 gaps, because there's 3 different entry points for the sewer system.
Correct.
So you're saying, Chase, that those 4 properties where it looks like their service lines can go towards the green lines and not have any easement on their property?
That is correct.
Okay. If I can keep elaborating, are there any grants available under like health and safety that
these residents could apply for, or the city could apply for, to lower the overall cost of putting this in, because I think this would be a classic health and safety item. There's got to be something, I would think, to look at.
There's none that I've found thus far for private property septic systems. But
it's a city septic. City sewer line, I should say.
I guess for council's sake and information, on past projects or other projects, whether it's developers or private properties, we had a West 27th Street sewer extension about the time the new high school was being built that services a new subdivision in the high school location, that a sewer was extended, a tapping district was established at the time. Generally, it includes the design costs, all of the right-of-way costs, and the construction costs. To date, we have not included any easement costs. The city would assume the cost of fair market value to pay for the easements, as well as assuming the design costs. Those would not be included in what would be the tapping fee districts.
Mr. Mayor? Director Shoggy, I'd like to return to the environmental implications. So if we were not the ones to say, no, you can't have your permit to put your septic back in, and instead the county says you can't, is that something that would happen? And what would happen then if you can't have your septic and you also don't have a sewer line?
So generally, the county administers all of the septics. We don't have the septic. So if the county were to come in and say that you have to find an alternative way, at some point they're going to force you to go get the city sewer. But usually the city takes that project on just due to the fact that we can get it over to those residents to serve them. It's very difficult for a private property owner to have rights to cross over another private property without permission.
And are we feeling pressure from the county to do this project?
Not to my knowledge. I know there's been problematic properties that have had septic issues. That's kind of what generated this project a handful of years ago. So,
okay.
Mr. Mayor, Director Troggy, how confident are we in the tapping fee estimates we've given the property owners thus far?
Fairly
How are those
confident.
calculated?
We've used construction costs for the last couple of years. Actually, this in 2024, we're kind of seeing them trending downward. We've also included what we're anticipating as fair market value for easement negotiations. So we've kind of given them our best estimated value for both easement compensations as well as construction costs. So until we get a bid, we don't really know.
Thanks.
I have a follow-up question for cost. So the cost to being that usually the calculation is based on your water usage on what your sewer is that kind of a standard calculation that was described earlier, or how did we compare with other properties in other cities or other properties we have that have a well?
You're referring to a property that may be on a well but has city sewer, and yes, that is correct, that it's basically double the minimum due to the fact that we don't know the water usage. But there are ways, and we have had it in the community, where you can put a meter on the well, so we can go out at that point then and read the meter and know how much usage is and get an accurate bill.
And then just to check with Director Schrage as well, for those easement payments, would those be paid, if this project moved forward, when would those be paid within the timeline of the project?
Easements would be paid prior to the start of construction.
On that meter, would that be at the resident's cost, or would that be at the city's cost to install that meter?
That would be a property owner cost.
Okay. Any
Mr.
other
Mayor?
Yep.
Yeah, if I may, just for clarification on the section 3, the leg that's running to the west there, could we not connect to that chevron in section 2 directly? That's a, as the crow flies, more direct line, or is there a reason for going to the west off of that south section?
In my time here, there's probably been 5 alternatives, and there's probably been 5 before my time, so there's many different alignments that could be taken. It just depends on the impacts to that specific property and what that property owner at that time would like to see. We tried to do our best to work with every property owner on the alignments.
I'm just looking at from the cost perspective, a shorter run is going to be more cost effective, yes?
Yes.
Any other questions, discussions, thoughts from council?
I'll give a dad joke that, I wish we were all tacos, because then we could make everybody happy, but we're not.
You've been keeping that one on hand?
Been keeping that in the pocket.
Mm-hmm.
Hannah might have heard it twice now.
Still got a long way to go. You already used it.
I got more.
Okay.
All right, seeing no more further comments, questions from council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
I guess I would just like to add kind of my perspective on this. It's my understanding that, these are definitely valuable properties in the community. A house just sold and did pretty well. I think that generally speaking, when most people are looking to buy a house, incurring the cost of septic in town is not particularly desirable. I know that there are a lot of costs associated with maintaining a septic system. You even have to buy special toilet paper. And, I think that that is something to consider, and that we are also responsible for the future of our community. I understand that this impacts many of you right now today, and we are doing our best to try to keep that in mind. But, it is our hope that our community is everything that it can be. And so, like Director Schrage mentioned, we're hoping to not have any septic in town. We want everybody tapped into our sewer line because that is what is best for our community, at least in my opinion. And so, for me, I am going to vote to approve this. But, I hope that we can continue to answer questions, to be good citizens, to communicate well. And I apologize if that didn't happen in the beginning. I think that, we have spoken many times as a council that there is always room for improvement, especially in our communication. We've got a lot of moving parts, and so we try our best, and it doesn't always happen. So that's just kind of my 2 cents, and that's why I'm going to vote the way that I'm going to vote.
Thank you, Councilmember Chrisman. Any other discussion? Thoughts from council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yep, Councilmember Cruz.
To Mr. Schrage or whoever can answer, what constitutes a failure of a septic system that it would need maintenance? I mean, I've got several on the farm. I got River Cabin, and we don't buy special paper. They operate for decades. How do you compute or what criteria signifies that septic is no longer viable?
I don't know that I can answer that. That's Blackhawk County Health that does those inspections. But generally speaking, it's based on the type of system, the leach field, the perk test, whether the septic system is providing adequate distribution of the gray water into the ground system. But I can't really speak to their inspection protocol for the health department.
So they would be allowed no maintenance whatsoever?
I guess I don't know what you mean by no maintenance whatsoever.
Well, I don't know. I mean, your septic cap and the distribution box, maintenance on that. Tree roots get in those, and you can clean those out, and then the system runs fine. I've done that a couple times on the farm. Kind of basic stuff. It's not really, I mean, technically it's failure, but it's easy to service, maybe is a better word, service the septic, keep it flowing properly. But I don't know. I guess we're at the mercy of what county DNR. So,
Chief, so if I can,
it seems,
and let me
just
rephrase
seems-
that, if I quick, Daryl. I think it's kind of asked, because I know if there's minor repairs needed to a septic system, that's still allowable, but I think there's a gray area between what's a systemic failure, where it's required to be replaced, and what's a minor thing that can still be fixed without having to replace the system. Can you kind of speak to that piece?
Well, general maintenance would include pumping of the tank. That's supposed to be done every 3 to 5 years, depending on your system. I would say, reconstruction, if you have to replace a leach line, add a leach line. Maybe you do not have enough room at this point if you have a small parcel, you just might not have enough room for a distribution of the water. That would require a replacement. But general maintenance, whether it's pumping or small things, that wouldn't be considered reconstruction or failure.
Okay.
I guess I have one last question for Mr. Schrage on the number 1, number 2, and number 3. You said you've attempted at different times to break these up and do number 1, for example, or do number 2, or do number 3 in different. Is there still an option to look at that, to break this into 3 different projects, or is it one and that's the only thing we're going to do?
There's always an option to break it into different districts, separate projects. Generally speaking, lower the quantities, the higher the cost from the contractor.
Any other discussion, questions, thoughts from council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
If we were to choose to, how would we choose to go through 3 separate projects and have the homeowners in each of the 3 sections decide when they're ready to move forward to this? What would be the way to go about doing that? And find out what the additional cost would be.
Mr. Rogers, I'm guessing that would be a motion to table this with some direction to staff to review those options.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we can't parcel this this evening.
Yeah.
So there'd be a lot of study done and different proposals coming back. However, council wishes to see those proposals.
And I'm assuming then that the additional proposals will be at additional cost, especially if we're having to get engineering involved, correct?
Well, they're starting over, essentially. So.
Right. Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep, Councilmember Cruz.
I don't know why we would consider it starting over. We've got the 3 components of this. I think I'd be in favor of making a motion to postpone or table, whichever is the proper version here, for some additional preliminary studies on numbers so that the residents can themselves feel more comfortable with what goes forward.
Just to check, when you say you're in favor of making a motion, are you making a motion?
I will make the motion to table. Mr. Rogers, is that proper?
No,
Or
the better motion would be
postpone?
to postpone to a definite time in the future. And it doesn't have to be a date, Daryl, can be
Okay.
following study or something.
I'd make a motion to postpone the outcome of this pending some further studies of 3 separate projects.
I'd second that.
So we have a motion and second, and we'll open up for discussion on that motion specifically too.
Can I say one thing, Mayor? Keep in mind that the way it's laid out here and what would come before the council in the future is 3 separate tapping districts. Area 1, Area 2, Area 3. it's not one tapping district.
Yep. So we have a motion and seconded on the table to look at postponing this to an indefinite time with direction to staff to look at a proposal on splitting the tapping districts. Any discussion from council on that motion?
Well, Mr. Mayor, may I? I mean, what's the proposal? I mean, aren't we asking the staff to develop the proposal for 3 different districts? Is that right?
Well, yeah, that's what this would be, is just postponing this vote and directing staff to look at bringing some information forward on that.
But as I understood, and Director Schrage, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, this is one of many ways that obviously this can be done. I mean, is that enough direction for staff?
We haven't put before you in 3 separate tapping districts. We're just putting it in one bid package to have the cost as low as possible from the contractor.
So carving up the assessment of the 3 different ones is doable?
You'd probably just change some of the cost estimates and.
Right. Yeah, to separate them out 3 separate bid packages?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that.
Mr. Mayor, and what would be your rough cost increase on that? And that then increases everyone's cost, correct? Because then they all have to pay their tapping fee divided among, say, 3 properties.
It would increase each individual area. Yeah, and for example, if area 1, generally this is not the numbers that they are. If area 1 was 100,000 and we separate it out, bid it as a different project, maybe it goes up to 130,000. So that tapping of 130 instead of 100 now is distributed amongst those property owners in the same manner.
And I could take it, though, too, as if we did that, if council wanted to, I'm guessing we could have a comparison of, well, if you wanted to move forward with 3 districts, here's the option, or there's still on the table the option to approve it as the one tapping district.
Yeah, we're not proposing one tapping district. It is separated out into 3 like it's shown on the screen.
Okay, excuse me, I just meant, again, we could come back with the options. It wouldn't just be no, we can't review this original proposal.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep, Councilmember Cruz.
So if we have 3 separate bid packages going out to excavating companies, sewer line companies, then the citizens would have a chance, the property owners in this case would have a chance to further say A or nay, they're happy with their septic or whatever the case may be. I think that would help appease the diverse opinions here or desires. So that's my thought.
Any other discussion from council on the motion to postpone this and bring back some of that additional information?
That would give us a comparison, so we would know, and it also give some time for some more pros and cons of whose property impacts this is and what their options would be. Because I'm with
Plus, they can see what trees are going to come down.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, if I may. I think there's part of me that sees some of the for and against in each of these tapping districts, so I don't know that breaking them up into 3 of the exact same plans is going to do any good in that regard. We've also heard from representatives from ACOM that we will do our best to mitigate and or compensate. I'm torn on this total package, but it is one of those things where these are now in town. I don't know if it's just, the price of living in a municipality, that this is an eventuality that they might have to do. I would want to double check, Director Schrage, if you wouldn't mind. I know this is not on the motion directly, but the cost for the construction, are we eating that, or is that what's being spread against the 16 properties, or is it the tapping fee is in addition to that spread?
The construction cost only is what would be distributed amongst the properties.
Okay.
I would just add to that according to state statute, the entire cost of the improvement could be assessed. And I think the city's trying to mitigate that sum by leaving off acquisition costs and design costs.
Mm-hmm. So we're eating a portion of the bill, if you will. Okay.
And quickly, I will just speak to, because I know this question came up in some of the written feedback or the written response we got, concerns about being able to sell the home without having to pay the fee. You would be able to sell the home without having to incur any costs as long as the septic system is working. So I think the whole thing is designed so that the only time you incur a cost is when you are moving from the septic system to the city because of a failure of the existing septic system. So I know that was one thing that was brought up as a concern in that email, but we did get clarification on.
And one more item, following up with Mr. Rogers' comment, would be generally with design, what we're anticipating as being right-of-way acquisition, and our right-of-way acquisition consultant that is doing the work, the city's contributing approximately $500,000. Estimated construction values for all three areas combined is just over $400,000.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep, Councilmember Cruz.
So is this project going to break ground this year yet, or will it be spring 2025? So I asked that question with the thought that if we postpone this to the next council meeting, is that sufficient time to get an answer? And when would we decide to bring the answer forward as to separating this out?
Mr. Mayor, could I jump in maybe real quick?
Yeah.
So one of the things that we got to make sure of is what you have before you tonight is really to start the project, to start the property acquisition. Now, at a later time, the council can decide to break this up and say, hey, you know what, we're not going to bid this, we're not going to. But this, what the motion before you tonight is allows the staff to move forward with just starting the project. There's going to be plenty of other times when this project's going to come in front of the council for, plans and specs, and the hearing, and actually even selecting the low bid and signing the contract. So, the project's really kind of at the start here, and that's really where we're at. So, just want folks to keep that in mind.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep, Councilmember Cruz.
So I guess I'm still asking, is this, Director Gaines, Mr. Gaines said what he said, are we intending to be able to break ground this fall, or will this be likely next spring based on timelines? We're in the middle of the summer, pretty much today, starts the second half, fiscal 25. Is that the case, or how much are we going to expend in costs to get next decision?
Mm-hmm.
If we, postpone now, sort out the details, have another council meeting, and then we say, okay, everybody knows what chips are on the table, and we have a better handle on what's happening. We're at the mercy of the county. It sounds like they say your septic's no good. You don't have an option, whether that's in 1 year or 20 years. So it's just a matter of having everybody understand the costs a little more clearly.
Director Schwager, if you could speak to the
Construction would not take place this year. Easement acquisition and negotiations generally take about 4 months. So that puts us in the fall. Best bid prices are in the winter months. So letting a project in the months of November through January, February, have the best prices.
Okay, thank you, Director Schwager. All right, so just to remind everyone, we're on a motion right now to postpone this vote to then have staff bring back additional information on those separate bid packages. So is there any other conversation on that motion? We'll get that vote first.
Mr. Mayor, can I clarify again what we're asking staff to bring back and when?
It would essentially be, correct me if I'm wrong, is a motion to bring back looking at the 3 districts as separate bid packages and the costs that would be associated with that. But then essentially we'd be still looking at going down this process with those 3 separate bid packages, but they would be looked at as separate packages and voted on as separate packages.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure where that gets us.
Good point.
I mean,
I
I
can comment.
don't, I don't know if that's gleaning any new information.
The only thing you'll see is higher cost. Now the consultant has to break 3 plan sets. That's an additional fee. Same with the right-of-way consultant, additional fee.
My understanding is from the motion is the point would be to try and split this into 3 projects, so that's really moving down 3 separate tracks, which is then still 3 separate of these conversations to look at each of those bid packages, but I don't think it really moves off the discussion of trying to do this. I think it's just trying to split it up so we're dealing with smaller chunks.
If I may, I think
Mr.
the
Mayor.
only sensible reason to split it up would be to give us the opportunity to vote yay on some and nay on others. I don't think that's what's necessary at this point.
See, Mr. Mayor, you know, the initial question is, do we eventually want to move away from septic within the city? I mean, that's the question. We want to have people hooked up to sewer for obvious reasons. And I know that it's painful at the time for a lot of the homeowners that are in the area. That's true often. I know the cost is different related to sewer, but there's a lot of pain associated with other projects in town. And so I don't want it to be sort of a discussion about whether or not we're doing sewer or not. So I think the vote, as Mr. Gaines pointed out, tonight we're just saying, you know, we can put it in motion, and ultimately, if there needs to be a tweaking in the design, that may happen down the road, as long as it's not substantial for the bidding process, and we can keep working with the owners. But in a lot of ways, the vote is, you know, are we committed to moving away from septic for what is an area that is, you know, it's gorgeous, but has now kind of become more towards the center of the city? And my answer is yes. And I'm not sure a delay helps that.
So any other discussion on the motion to postpone the vote? All right, seeing none, and then Director Rogers, is this a roll call vote for the motion?
Voice vote.
Voice vote for that. So we need a voice vote. So all those in favor of postponing this vote to have staff come back with 3 different bid packages, please say aye.
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 And all opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Show of hands for those in favor.
Me.
And those opposed. So that motion does not carry. So we are back to the original motion as it's written in the packet. Resolution approving a public improvement project for the South Main Street Sanitary Sewer Extension Project and to authorize acquisition of a private property for said project. Is there any other further discussion on that item? Seeing none, requires a roll call vote, please. So that motion does carry. So that will move forward. And again, as City Administrator Gaines said, there will be more conversation on it. So I know we'll make sure we're continuing to reach out and at least have that further conversation as we get. And it sounds like, will we, just to clarify, Director Schrage, be moving some of those stakes and things to update where that proposed route is so that some of the residents can see what that
Yep,
will
we
be?
can have it all restaked. As soon as it's restaked, if individuals have questions, they can reach out to Mr. Ricky or myself, and we can meet on site and discuss some options.
Okay. And will there be any further direct meetings planned or public sessions to discuss some of those, or will it be mostly at this point direct interaction with the homeowners?
Probably direct interaction with each individual owner. Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right, and thank you everyone for coming out and making the time tonight. So we will move on to old business. Item number 4, pass ordinance number 3068, amending Chapter 6, Animals of the Code of Ordinances relative to impoundment of dogs, cats, or poultry running at large, redemption of impounded animals, permitting dog or cat or poultry to run at large, disposition of impoundment animals, and notice of destruction of animal, appeal upon its third and final consideration. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Been motioned and seconded. Any discussion from council? And any from the public? All right, seeing none, a roll call vote, please.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That motion carries. Item number 5, passed ordinance number 3069, amending the zoning map by removing real estate located at 2216 Main Street and 127 East 23rd Street, Commercial District, upon its second consideration. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And
Second.
And any discussion from council? Any discussion from the public? All right, seeing none, roll call vote, please.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That motion carries. Item number 6, pass ordinance number 3070, amending Chapter 10, Garbage and Refuse of the Code of Ordinances relative to containers, placement for collection, penalty of violation, and service charges established upon its second consideration. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And any discussion from council? And any from the public? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That motion carries. We'll now move on to the consent calendar. So the following items will be acted upon by a voice vote and a single motion without separate discussion unless someone from the council or public requests that a specific item be considered separately. Are there any requests for items to be considered separately from the council? And any from the public? All right, seeing none, we will consider items 7 through 9 of the consent calendar. We'll look for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve consent calendar.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion from council? And any from the public? Seeing none, this requires a roll call or a voice vote. So all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We'll now move to the resolution calendar. So the following items will be acted upon by a roll call vote on a single motion without separate discussion unless someone from the council or public requests that a specific item be considered separately. Are there any requests for items to be considered separately from the council? Or any from the public?
I don't know if it'll fall under 15, 16, 17,
15, 16, and 17. Okay. And with it. All right, so do we have a motion to look at approving items any other from public? All right, so we have a motion to approve items number, if I get my pages correct here, items number 10 through 26, excluding items 15, 16, and 17 for approval.
So moved.
Second.
It's been motion and seconded. Any discussion from council? And any discussion from the public? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And then we will look to take item number 15, start with resolution approving and adopting an amendment to the city's health insurance benefits and summary plan document relative to continuation of health coverage for dependents of eligible peace officers and firefighters. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second, motion second, and any discussion from council? And any discussion from the public, please? And is it fair to say this discussion would apply to 15, 16, and 17? Or would you like to speak on them separately?
I don't know which one applies to. So Carrie Sherwood Dyke, I just wanted to call out what the changes were for the people that didn't listen to the previous meeting and that they're now watching now. And correct me if I'm wrong, Bailey. So in the Wellmark book, it already had subsection 15 in there for 11.6 subsection 15. We're adding subsection 9. There was not a city policy for either one of these. So we're adding a city policy that will contain both of them, and both of them will be the same 3 years paid for under the employee price, and then the extension of that until you're 65 or 26. Wish I could say I beat the 26 one, but I won't. And the other point I wanted to make, and Bailey kind of alluded to this, was the city comparisons. They are all over the place. I mean, I called a whole bunch of them. They're all over the place. And I understand why you do that, because you want to kind of benchmark what other cities do, but somebody has to be first. Somebody has to be first, and they have to be first to do the right thing. Waterloo they take it employee cost all the way to 65. I don't know if anybody had that discussion or what actually Waterloo does. And there's a range of things the other cities do, but somebody's got to be first. And Cedar Falls likes to do the future things, roundabouts, and all of these things that other cities are kind of by blinders, but this might be one that Cedar Falls does something first. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Council, go ahead.
I have a quick question. Is that
Yeah,
right?
go ahead.
And 15, 16, 17 are kind of all related. I know they require separate votes, but they're all related. there was a reference, I think, before about relating back to February coverage. This policy, if we adopt it, starts July 1st, 2024. So, and I don't see any retroactive language within this policy, right? So this would be covered people going forward?
So number 15 here, the resolution approving and adopting city health insurance benefits, summary plan description relative to health coverage for dependents of eligible peace officers and firefighters. That one is retroactive back to February 1st, 2024.
Okay, I was looking for that language in there.
Resolution.
The other ones would be this date forward.
Okay. And the reason we're doing that is because Wellmark said they would go back that far?
Correct, for that one item.
Okay, thank you.
Bailey, I got a quick question before she sits back down. When Ms. Sherwood was up here, she had kind of looked over at you and said, right, Bailey? From my angle, it looked like you were doing this.
So,
Is there something,
yeah, so just for clarification, the city policy and the SPD did already cover 411.6 subsection 15. The city already covered health insurance continuation for people who fall into that code section, which is the death benefit for line of duty death benefit. You're eligible to stay on continuation coverage for that section. We would be adding this resolution is adding 411.6 subsection 9, which is the accidental death benefit. We already covered the line of duty.
And if I think, go to it, I think it was just that we didn't have a specific written, okay, what do we cover, what cost? And we've added that this time of what specific costs we cover with the 36 months and then the group rate after that.
Correct. We are adding all that clarification as well.
that's what I was just checking for you. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I think speaking of being first, the state is already moving the direction of covering presumptive causes. So this is in line with what we're doing as a state as well.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I think a couple things that this situation has presented to us. First of all, I think it's very important that we do follow policy. And if there is a necessary change to our policies, or maybe not necessary, I think it's important that we do look at them, but that we are not reactive. The other thing I wanted to add is that I personally felt fairly disappointed with some of the responses and comments that occurred online around this situation. We were made aware, and a constituent reached out to many of us, and we felt that the best action moving forward was to allow for our mayor, who we often refer to as the quarterback of this team, to handle the next steps. You know, we have had a lot of back and forth with Wellmark. We've clearly had a lot of language change to our policies. And I think it would be very unfair if every single person responded with, you know, some information that may or may not be correct. And so, you know, I think it's important that we, of course, reply to our emails, but to shame this group of people for say that we were not active or not proactive or do not care, especially for political gain, I think is just an awful use of, you know, time and not a great way to treat people. So, you know, we are really taking the time to make sure that this is the best thing that we can do, and I hope that that is seen and we will move forward in that way.
Thank you, Councilmember Chrisman.
All right, Rick Sharp, Cedar Falls. This is just amazing. I applaud all of you. Hopefully you all vote in favor of this. Just a couple things you brought up, how many people this had impacted in the past. I would have been a firefighter since '94, and counting Captain Sherwood's death, there would have been 2 on the fire side. So cost-wise, this doesn't cost the city nothing. I've looked at, you just showed your numbers. You guys can easily absorb this cost, especially for 3 years. There was a question by the council member there about stop loss, and I don't know where you're going with that, with the rates, but even if the family, if this wasn't passed and the family decides to pay the full $1,100 a month, whatever it is, they're still going to have the $110,000 stop loss. That still applies. So that to me is a non-issue. Again, I don't know what you were going at there. I'm glad that the mayor, that you are open and hopefully push for future employees that perform hazardous duties in the city. Police and firefighters should not be singled out for this because we got to look at public works employees, parks employees. Like I said, if they're cutting down a tree and it lands on them, death. You don't want their family going through the same thing. Last month, a state DOT worker was run over by a semi-truck when he's putting out cones. Semi-truck driver wasn't paying attention, ran right through the cones and ran him over. Could easily happen to a public works employee changing lights or putting the cones there. So hopefully this lays the groundwork for something in the future for all the employees that's doing hazardous duties for that. But again, the numbers there, like I said, the city can easily absorb this cost. And the amount of time that happened is so minimal, thankfully, that we shouldn't, as a city, you shouldn't want to put their families through this kind of extra grief and what they're already facing for. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sharp. Anyone else for a public comment? Can only do it once. If council's okay.
I'm fine.
Go ahead.
So I'm not going to go into all the history and why I'm extremely frustrated over what has happened, because this happened, this all started way back with wrong information. I had to fight like heck to get anybody to listen. And thank you, Mayor, for actually listening and looking at what I was saying. And there are other mistakes that have been made along the way, and I'm not going to stand here and lay them all out. But I think if you saw them all, you would understand why I'm so frustrated, why I did share my frustrations with everybody, because you wouldn't even want to imagine it. And it kept happening all the way up to the memorial in Corville. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? So I will just say quickly, thank you to council and to Carrie, Rick, to the whole community, because I know this has been a very emotional topic. And I will second some of what Councilwoman Christman said of, we wanted to make sure we followed the process, got Wellmark approval, which if anyone's ever worked with insurance companies, it can take a little bit. And I know this has taken some time, and there's a lot of conversations we've had that aren't meant for just open discussion and a lot of details and things to work out. So I know it's not something that everything works out smoothly, but I think the thing I've always focused on is making sure the conversations we could have stayed focused on what's a good policy for us to have for staff, for our team, for our employees, and just making sure we're doing what's right to, one, from an employee recruitment standpoint, making sure we're doing what we need to do to make sure our staff know they're supported, and if the unfortunate happens, that the family's taken care of. And I know it doesn't go unnoticed by a lot of our teams, and especially our staff and community members. So just thank you to everyone for, I know this hasn't been the smoothest process. So any other discussion from council?
Just
item 4.
Real quick, Mr. Mayor, if I may. I mean, that's precisely my concern, and the reason for initial hesitation was we needed to make sure it was good policy for the city. And that's why there needed to be some education, I think, amongst the council before then. Obviously, the unfortunate death brought the issue to our attention, and then there has to be a separation of that to make sure that it's the wisest thing for the city going forward. And I understand the comments about other city employees as well down the road. But given the work, Mr. Mayor, that you've done and the work with Wellmark and the rarity of it all, I also understand what Councilmember Christman was saying. So that delay, that contemplation, that thinking was for that purpose.
And there was a lot of conversation being had with the team, so. All right, otherwise, seeing no other discussion, we'll then look for items 15 specifically. We'll do them one by one.
Yep.
But a approval or motion for resolution approving and adopting an amendment to the city's health insurance benefits and summary plan document relative to continuation of health coverage for dependents of eligible police officers and firefighters. Actually, we've already had a motion in a second, so roll call vote, please.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll now move to item number 16, resolution approving and adopting amendments to the CFD 2251 personnel policy insurance benefits. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
And seconded. Any discussion from the council? And any from the public? All right, seeing none, a roll call vote, please.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And item number 17, resolution approving and adopting an amendment to the city's health insurance benefits and summary plan document relative to continuation of existing health coverage for one additional month. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And seconded. And any discussion from council? And any from the public? Seeing none, roll call vote, please. Go through.
It didn't go through? Twice. Oh.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That motion carries. Now look to new ordinances. Item number 27, pass an ordinance amending Chapter 2, Administration of the Code of Ordinances relative to the Controller, City Treasurer, Information Systems Manager, City Clerk, appointment, powers and duties of the City Attorney, appointment, powers and duties of Human Resources Manager, Planning and Community Service Manager, Building Official, Manager of Operations and Maintenance, City Engineer, and Water Reclamation Manager upon its first consideration.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Any discussion from council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
I think it's just helpful to note for those that picked up a packet but don't, or picked up the agenda and don't have a packet, this is literally just removing such appointment shall be in accordance with statutory civil service procedures from each of these subsections where it's no longer necessary.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah.
It's part of our ongoing cleaning up of our ordinances, so.
Sometimes sitting out there, it's hard to know what all are they doing so quickly. It's pretty innocuous here.
And any other discussion from council? And any from the public? You ran out. No more.
It's Rick Sharp, Cedar Falls. So no way that you can just waive all three?
I asked that too, but.
Okay, because I saw the agenda too. It's like a sentence, and why do this each time? That's all.
Yep.
Ordinance law.
So it's pesky.
If only we could.
Government laws.
Kevin, can you help us out? Sorry.
Any other discussion from public? All right, seeing none, requires a roll call vote, please.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item number 28, pass an ordinance amending Chapter 17, Parks and Recreation of the Code of Ordinances relative to public events on city property upon its first consideration. Motion.
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion from council? And any from the public? All right, seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor,
Sorry,
was
do you
there
have
a-
someone from the public? Come up to the mic if you got some. Just name and city.
Denzel, Cedar Falls. First one in a long time. Just curious, just for information, what's the amendment? Like, what's being amended? It just says amendment to, and then lists of stuff. It makes no sense.
Attorney Rogers, you want to speak to what that one is?
Clarifies whether the public event permit requirement applies to city-sponsored events, which it's city events on city property, so obviously it doesn't. So that's the clarification. It was already the city's practice.
Does that answer it for you? Yes. Okay. And any other discussion from the public? All right, seeing none, roll call vote, please.
All members voting aye, Mr.
My
Mayor.
mouse falls asleep sometimes.
All right, and that motion carries. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item number 29, actually, which is, that's the one we just did, right?
My mouse falls asleep sometimes.
Did we just do item number 29? Or on
We
30?
are doing 29.
Okay. Item number 29, passed an ordinance amending Chapter 23, Traffic and Motor Vehicles of the Code of Ordinances relative to parking prohibited on specific streets upon its first consideration. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And seconded. Any discussion from council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Just for help of the public, this one is just because we no longer have the police station down at City Hall, so we're just changing the name of it. So it's just City Hall North parking lot instead of the police station parking lot. Yep. And for those interested in this, the online version has 268 pages that we get to read. Usually it's about 800, am I right? But yeah, the agenda doesn't include all of the details.
Thank you for that. Any discussion
You don't wanna
from
print that.
council? Any from the public? All right, seeing none, roll call vote, please.
All right, it's much better.
Does it work same time?
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The motion carries. Item number 30, pass an ordinance amending Chapter 26, zoning of the Code of Ordinances relative to Residence District upon its first consideration. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second, and any discussion from council?
I didn't get a chance to ask this, but how does this affect the chicken raising people?
Mayor, my understanding is it was to remove a conflict. We already allow backyard chickens.
Okay, okay.
And these seem to prohibit it, so they're in conflict.
Gotcha. And I apologize, I meant to ask before the meeting and didn't get a chance.
No worries.
But that clears that up, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Schultz.
So this removes the less liberal approach.
Yeah.
They can still have their chickens.
Still good on chicken.
How about the eggs?
I'll take the eggs if they got them.
And any discussion from the public? Seeing none, we'll look for a roll call vote. It got really quiet.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That motion carries. We'll now do bills and claims. Do we have a motion to allow bills and claims for July 1st, 2024?
So moved. Second.
Motion and seconded. And any discussion from council? Or any discussion from the public? All right, seeing none, requires a roll call vote, please.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That motion carries. Any council updates or announcements?
I would have a comment on the, everything from the public's embracing of the fireworks and how well that went and how they're looking forward to the future events. And then with everything that we didn't know maybe 6 months ago about Sturgis, it was a fantastic weekend. And I want to applaud all the folks that are the volunteers and all the folks that are involved with Sturgis behind the scenes and in front of the scenes, and then all the city folks that really do. I was interrupted with a conversation with somebody because this guy was pulling signs. It looked like he even had a sweat going. So, yeah, he did. So everybody pitched in, so it was really good. My last comment is apparently I'm out of the loop because I didn't know we had a quarterback.
It's a figurative quarterback.
Didn't you pay attention?
I didn't even know we had a figurative quarterback.
I have a jersey. Just kidding, I
Oh.
don't have a jersey.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just add on to that just a little bit, I would like to commend the staff as well. You know, one of the things that they had going on was Sturgis Falls, and it takes quite a bit of the time, but when you're fighting a flood right in the middle of it, takes a lot of time as well. So, I mean, thank you to all of our staff.
Second that. Third that. Any other council updates or announcements? All right, seeing none, council referrals, pressing referrals from council. If not, then we do need to move to an executive session, so look for a motion to move to executive session to discuss property acquisition per Iowa Code, Section 21.51J, to discuss the purchase or sale of particular real estate only where premature disclosure could be reasonably expected to increase the price the governmental body would have to pay for that property or reduce the price the governmental body would receive for that property, and to discuss information contained in the records in the custody of a governmental body that are confidential records pursuant to Iowa Code Section 22.750. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion from council on this? Discussion from the public? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That motion carries. So we will now go to executive session. The council meeting will officially end after we get done with that and come back. No further work will be discussed or no further city business other than adjourning the meeting. So thank you, everyone, for staying. You're welcome to stay until we come back out if you'd like. However, you do not need to. So thank you, everyone, for the time. Have a good night.